Today we will take about Jeffrey Epstein's island. What really happened there? Now we dive into a topic that has shocked the world and continues to raise questions. We're talking about Jeffrey Epstein's infamous island, Little St. James, and the dark secrets it holds. Stick around as we explore the mysteries, the allegations, and what's happening with the island now. But before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on our latest content. But before that, hello, everyone, and welcome back to TFN channel. Who did Epstein host on his island? Of course, there were always guests. Among the famous names reportedly hosted by Epstein were theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, Nobel laureate Lawrence Krauss, comedian Chris Tucker, actor Kevin Spacey, Victoria's Secret magnate Les Wexner, model Naomi Campbell, former Tony Blair aide Lord Peter Mandelson, and Prince Andrew of the United Kingdom. It has been claimed that Bill Clinton was also a guest, though he denies ever having been there. Donald Trump reportedly flew on one of Epstein's private jets, but it is unclear if he visited the island. The magician David Copperfield is even said to have proposed to supermodel Claudia Schiffer there. Guests would arrive on one of Epstein's Gulfstream jets at Cyril E. King Airport on St. Thomas, in a private area separate from the main runway. They would then be shuttled to Little St. James on one of Epstein's black helicopters. Epstein was fond of treating the guests, reportedly paying for a submarine to be modified to give a seabed tour to Professor Hawking, who had never been underwater before. One former employee described it as like a five-star hotel where nobody paid. In January 2024, up to 200 Epstein associates are expected to be unmasked after a judge ordered the unsealing of court documents in a lawsuit brought by Ms. Giuffre against Maxwell. Many of the documents, to be unsealed any time from January 1st, have previously been publicly released, though names were redacted. In December 2023, U.S. District Judge Loretta Preskow ruled that there was no legal justification to keep the names redacted as John and Jane Does. This has paved the way for several famous figures to find their names publicly linked to Epstein, some of whom may be alleged visitors to the island. Didn't anyone notice Epstein's alleged sex trafficking? Certainly they did. From the start, locals on St. Thomas whispered darkly about Epstein's activities, calling his private jets the Lolita Express. When scuba divers swam near the island, security guards would reportedly appear to patrol the edge of the water. At one point, Epstein was ferrying about 200 workers back and forth every day to build his projects. When he was there, it was keep to yourself and do your thing, one of them told the AP, adding that the mogul would sometimes give away old material or surplus material. Airport staff on St. Thomas could see who Epstein was bringing with him on the express. On multiple occasions I saw Epstein exit his helicopter, stand on the tarmac in full view of my tower, and board his private jet with children, female children, a former air traffic controller told Vanity Fair. My colleagues and I definitely talked about how we didn't understand how this guy was still allowed to be around children. We didn't say anything because we figured law enforcement was doing their job. That is regrettable, but we really didn't even know who to tell, or if anyone really cared. Another airstrip employee said, "There'd be girls that looked like they could be in high school. They looked very young. They were always wearing college sweatshirts. It seemed like camouflage, that's the best way to put it. I could see him with my own eyes. I compared it to seeing a serial killer in broad daylight. I called it the face of evil. It was like he was flaunting it." Sometimes the girls would be carrying shopping bags from designer brands such as Gucci and Dior. The Alexanders also grew suspicious. They looked like they had stepped out of an underwear catalog, Kathy told the Mail. They walked around with very few clothes on or lounged around by the pool with nothing on. It was like that most of the time. I was concerned about their ages. A few of them looked very young, and I couldn't help but wonder if their mothers knew where they were. Miles Alexander added that he had sometimes had to refuse Epstein's requests to smuggle in female guests by boat without logging their names and passport numbers with the government of St. Thomas. The couple's unease grew until they finally quit in 2007. In our final meeting, Epstein told me I had always been his conscience, Alexander said. I'm certainly battling with my conscience now. What really happened on Epstein's island? That is the subject of multiple ongoing court cases, but the accusations are shocking. According to a lawsuit filed by Prince Andrew's accuser, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, Little St. James was the center of a worldwide grooming scheme in which recruiters working for Epstein targeted young women who were open to abuse and manipulation, played on their hopes and fears, dazzled them with displays of vast wealth and power, and then forced them to have sex with clients while keeping them in line with threats and blackmail. Ms. Giuffre says that Prince Andrew sexually abused her on Little St. James when she was 17, which the prince unequivocally denies. Andrew and Ms. Giuffre settled her lawsuit against him on February 15th, bringing an end to the protracted legal case in New York court. The Virgin Islands Attorney General's office makes similar claims, saying, between 2001 and 2019, the Epstein enterprise transported underage girls and young women to the Virgin Islands, who were then taken via helicopter or private vessel to Little St. James, where they were deceptively subjected to sexual servitude, forced to engage in sexual acts, and coerced into commercial sexual activity and forced labor. To accomplish his illegal ends, Epstein formed an association with multiple defendants and others, both companies and individuals, who were willing to participate in, facilitate, and conceal Epstein's criminal activity in exchange for Epstein's bestowal of financial and other benefits, including sexual services and forced labor from victims. In fact, the complaint describes Little St. James as just one step in a worldwide web of private flights that ferried sex trafficking victims to London, Paris, Tangier, Grenada, St. Louis, Palm Beach, Atlantic City, and beyond. It says some victims were as young as 12. The complaint also alleges that Little St. James served as a prison for the victims, with Epstein controlling all communication with the outside world. It says one 15-year-old tried to escape by swimming, but Epstein organized a search party, recaptured her, and confiscated her passport. Remember, he owns a whole island, said Attorney General Denise George in 2020. So it wasn't a situation where a child or a young woman would be able to just break away and run down the street to the nearest police station. One alleged victim told CBS News that she had been raped in Epstein's office in St. Thomas and that he had a gun strapped to the bedpost in his bedroom on Little St. James. The complaint says Epstein kept a computerized list of underage girls in or near the Virgin Islands who could be brought to the island. Why didn't anyone do anything? Authorities made several attempts to investigate Little St. James. As a sex offender, Epstein was required to re-register every year, and officials did try to visit the island in 2018 to verify his address. But according to the Attorney General's complaint, Epstein refused the officers entry at the dock, claiming it was his front door, and insisted on meeting them in his office on St. Thomas. He also made employees sign confidentiality agreements that banned them from talking to law enforcement and required them to report any inquiries to Epstein. Monitoring a sex offender with his own private islands and the resources to fly victims in and out on private planes and helicopters represented unique challenges and allowed the Epstein enterprise to limit scrutiny, the complaint says. In addition, both Little St. James and Great St. James are protected areas due to their coral reefs and wildlife. Local planning officials suspected Epstein of exceeding his building permits, and the Attorney General's complaint says that he was fined thousands of dollars for breaking environmental rules. Yet that kind of money was nothing to Epstein. In fact, the complaint argues that Epstein's purchase of Great St. James was simply a ruse to hide what was happening on Little St. James. The Epstein enterprise purchased the island for more than $20 million because participants wanted to ensure that it did not become a base from which others could view their activities or visitors, it says. Epstein purchased these properties to further shield his conduct from view, prevent his detection by law enforcement or the public, and allow him to continue and conceal his criminal enterprise. A criminal enterprise. In December 2022, the U.S. Virgin Islands filed a lawsuit in a federal court in New York against J.P. Morgan Chase, alleging the Wall St. Bank had been complicit in helping Epstein traffic vulnerable women and girls into sexual servitude at his two secluded islands. The USVI's Attorney General alleged J.P. Morgan helped pull the levers, through which Epstein paid his network of enablers and victims. Epstein withdrew as much as $750,000 a year in cash from J.P. Morgan accounts even after the late pedophile had been red flagged by the bank as a child sex offender, attorneys for the territory alleged in the lawsuit. J.P. Morgan rejected the allegations and tried to shift blame for Epstein's crimes onto high-ranking USVI officials. Their lawyers claimed that the USVI shielded him from accountability while reaping the benefits of his wealth. In early 2023, the USVI quietly began issuing subpoenas for the bank's top executives and other powerful, peripheral figures who were dragged into the case. Among them were J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, Tesla CEO and Twitter owner Elon Musk, and Google's co-founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin. There is no suggestion that any of the men were involved in Epstein's offending. When Mr. Dimon was quizzed under oath by USVI attorneys in late May, he said he did not recall ever hearing about Epstein or his sexual misconduct until after his arrest in 2019. Mr. Dimon, a Wall Street power player who has expressed an interest in running for president, said he first heard about Epstein when the story blew wide open. According to a transcript of the video deposition, Mr. Dimon was confronted with an email from Epstein's former assistant suggesting the pair were scheduled to meet as far back as 2010. He replied emphatically that he had never had an appointment, never met, or never known Jeff Epstein. In court filings in May, J.P. Morgan accused the islands and senior officials of enabling Epstein to commit his crimes. Lawyers for the bank claimed high-ranking USVI officials had been bought off by Epstein and actively worked with him while reaping the benefits of his wealth. He gave them money, advice, influence, and favors. In exchange, they shielded and even rewarded him, they wrote. J.P. Morgan also claimed that Epstein had bankrolled a USVI official's political campaign who later awarded him tax breaks. Then in September, weeks before the case was due to go to trial, J.P. Morgan announced it had settled the case for $75 million without admitting it was at fault. In a statement, the bank said it would pay $55 million to Virgin Island charities and anti-trafficking organizations, and $20 million to cover the island territory's legal expenses. What will happen to the island now? Epstein died in prison in 2019, in what authorities have ruled to be a suicide. In June 2023, a scathing U.S. government report laid bare a catalog of errors leading to his death, but confirmed the original assessment. After that, for nearly 2 years, the fate of Little St. James and Great St. James was in limbo after the government of the U.S. Virgin Islands asked a judge to give it control of Epstein's old assets. The billionaire's executor fought that request, saying they want to use his assets to set up a relief fund for sexual assault victims, and asking the government to unfreeze his 2 islands so they can sell them off. Ms. George countered by accusing them of mismanaging the estate and paying for lawyers, landscaping, and helicopter fees, but not the brave women who have stepped forward to participate in the compensation fund. But in November 2022, the U.S. Virgin Islands reached a settlement with the Epstein estate, which agreed to pay the government $105 million and half the proceeds from an eventual sale of the islands, plus $450,000 to repair environmental damage. Authorities said that Epstein had removed the ruins of old colonial structures from the days of slavery. With the path to a sale now clear, investor Stephen Deckoff announced on May 3, 2023 that he would buy both islands for $60 million, with the hope of opening a 25-room luxury resort by the end of 2025. That money was less than half of the $125 million asking price that was originally attached to the islands. In the meantime, Little St. James has become a hotspot for morbid tourists, urban explorers, and social media influencers attempting to access the island and make videos. Travelers frequently ask about it, and some local boat operators make it part of their tours. In November 2021, Google removed a number of offensive prank reviews from the island's listing on Google Maps after they were brought to the tech giant's attention by The Independent. Vernon Morgan, a taxi driver on St. Thomas, told the AP that he would rather people left it alone. It brought some kind of notoriety to the Virgin Islands, he said.